Tonight on CFTK-TV News, the Vanderhoof RCMP sent out a reminder about an older unsolved case. Several Vancouver police officers are being investigated for accusations of misconduct, and Donald Trump is in a situation no other former president has been in before.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Good evening, I'm Cale Maslin. Here's what's making news at the Northwest and beyond. A representative of the governing nation that recently bought the old co-op property in Terrace has said they're looking forward to putting shovels in the ground. CFTK-TV's Jaylene Matthews has more.
Ground at this Central Terrace location will likely be broken March 2025, says Northwest Regional Director Susie Hooper. As Métis Nation BC takes hold of the parcel and finalizes their plans to build a daycare, she says the group was looking for a central location.
We wanted a spot within the region that was central for the different communities. We have Prince Rupert District Métis community, as well as Tri-River, which is Smithers, like to Burns Lake to Kitwanga area. So we wanted someplace central in the region, and Terrace seemed like the perfect spot.
Hooper says the daycare will be inclusive, offering spaces to all while including cultural elements.
Like the childcare centers will foster inclusivity and cultural relevance for First Nations, for Métis First Nations, and all families in the region. You know, just so we have a safe, inclusive space. I believe there's going to be space for 44 children. You know, a space where you walk in and you felt welcome, you felt safe. It has, Métis art, Métis culture prominent within the buildings.
A part of the sale is still contingent on cleanup by the City of Terrace.
The other two parcels are contingent to the remediation of the property. And so once that happens, then we will delve further into the construction that will be happening then.
When that cleanup is complete, Métis Nation BC is set to end up purchasing about 4.2 acres of land in Terrace. The co-op property had been in possession of the City of Terrace since 2005. The building sat vacant for years before that and was demolished in 2011. According to Mike Pucci, Economic Lands and Development Officer, the land sat without sale for so long due to known contamination, which limited what could be built. For CFTK-TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
The Vanderhoof RCMP recently posted a reminder on their website about a case that is fairly old but still not entirely solved. The case in question is the disappearance of Madison Scott from a friend's birthday celebration at Hogsback Lake from 13 years ago. Foul play was suspected to play a part in the case, and the remains of Scott were found a year ago on a rural property in Vanderhoof. Even with the discovery of her remains, the investigation into what happened to her is still ongoing as the BC RCMP Major Crimes Special Projects Unit, along with the Vanderhoof RCMP, are trying to discover what led to Scott's disappearance and eventual death. Those who are able to provide new information about the case are asked to call the RCMP at 778-290-5291 and could potentially get a $100,000 reward. Hundreds of miners in BC could go on strike at the end of this week if they don't reach an agreement on a new contract. Unifor served a 72-hour strike notice to Teseco's Gibraltar copper mine north of Williams Lake on Tuesday. The union stated that its members deserve fair wages, strong safety protocols, and equitable treatment on the job, and the 550 workers are prepared to strike if a fair settlement can't be reached by tomorrow's end. Teseco responded in their own statement, saying that they remain committed to reaching a fair and equitable agreement. Coming up next is a look at BC's housing prices compared to other places in Canada. Welcome back. Despite more delays, the NDP says it has full confidence in the companies hired to build the new Patello Bridge and Broadway subway line. One of them is renowned around the world, but is also in the middle of a legal battle with Metro Vancouver over a mega project that has ballooned in cost. CTV's St. John Alexander has the details.
Spot a mega project underway in BC, and there is a good chance a company called Acciona is involved in its construction. A conglomerate with a long history in Canada, and some 30 countries around the world.
I love the cultural diversity.
In fact, the BC government wants the Spanish firm to help build the SkyTrain to Langley. It was part of the team that completed the dam at Site C, and Acciona is currently involved in the construction of the new Patella Bridge and the Broadway subway line, two projects that are delayed again.
The project is progressing and progressing well.
The company may be familiar to residents of North Vancouver. Acciona was in the middle of building the new sewage treatment plant when it was suddenly fired. Metro Vancouver officials said it had lost faith in the company to build on time and on budget. What was supposed to be done by 2020 is now triple the cost, almost $4 billion.
Councillors and the public have almost no information about what's gone wrong with this project.
Now the company and Metro Vancouver are suing each other. Acciona argued the site chosen is too small and would be unstable during an earthquake. It insists to this day the job could have been finished at a fraction of the current price. As for the Broadway subway and the Patella Bridge, the BC government blames a lack of progress during the pandemic, a worker strike, the rising cost of concrete and steel. Acciona saying it's an accurate picture of the reasons behind the delays and there is nothing further to add. The Spanish firm is an award-winning company, and it's important to note it's just one of many companies behind these projects. The province says it's confident in its stringent selection process. That confidence applies to the consortiums building these two projects. Still, there is now more pressure on everyone involved to meet and maybe even exceed the latest deadlines. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
Now to an investigation into the conduct of several Vancouver police officers. It started with officers firing a beanbag gun at an Indigenous woman, but it's the behavior after the confrontation that sparked a complaint about the VPD members. CTV's Isabella Zavarisi spoke with the woman who was arrested, and a warning: the contents of this story may be disturbing to some.
Audible pain as she's hit with a beanbag gun projectile. Moments later, officers approach, stand above her, and then break out in laughter. That laughter, the subject of a disciplinary hearing following a complaint from the public looking into whether 3 Vancouver police officers engaged in alleged police misconduct.
They laughed right after they shot me.
On April 6, 2022, the VPD received calls about a woman with an X-Acto knife threatening a security guard. Melody, who asked us not to use her last name, disputes this.
I didn't have a box knife. I thought they were after someone else. I thought something serious was going down in the alley.
She says she had gone to the dollar store to purchase art supplies. Melody walked into this alley behind Hastings Street. Police yell at her to stop and eventually shoot 1 beanbag round at her legs. The scars from being shot remain.
And it still hurts me to walk.
In audio obtained by CTV News, you can hear 2 people confront the officers following the shooting.
We heard laughing.
We heard you
I
laughing.
heard it.
I don't know who is laughing.
The VPD's initial investigation concluded the complaint was unsubstantiated. No surprise to this former VPD superintendent and former chief of the West Vancouver Police Department.
So I'm very disappointed in the actions of the police officers, but I'm not surprised given the culture we still have.
Cash Heed says there's no justification for the laughter.
What about care for the individual that you've just beanbagged that's on the ground? You know, I really think these officers, if they need to give their heads a shake.
The finding from the VPD's investigation were appealed. The case is now in the hands of a retired judge. According to his report, there's evidence that appears sufficient to substantiate alleged misconduct concerning the officers on 2 breaches of trust, discourtesy and neglect of duty.
We all don't deserve this, especially from them.
The challenge of finding an affordable home in the Lower Mainland has now spread across the entire province. A new report from Royal LePage ranks the cheapest cities in the country to own a home, and BC is nowhere to be found on it. CTV's Craig Krause has more on this and how our cities stack up.
Ranking the most affordable cities in Canada, Royal LePage was unable to find a single city in the entire province of BC that fits that criteria, resulting in plenty of people considering a change of scenery. Polling shows 45% of people living in Greater Vancouver would consider a move, and Edmonton was the top choice. This would be followed by St. John's and Thunder Bay, all three in the top 5 most affordable in Canada, with Thunder Bay having the average home selling at $299,000, which would require 22% of a household monthly income for a mortgage payment. The least expensive option here in BC, well, that's in the Okanagan, and the numbers may surprise you.
Least expensive area in BC outside of our top 15 was Kelowna. However, when we look at how much of the median income of a British Columbian would have to be spent towards buying a home and paying the mortgage of a home in Kelowna, it was 62% of one's mortgage.
The data also shows that Abbotsford is the second most affordable at 72%. Despite all of this, those living in Greater Vancouver are also the most likely to stay compared to people living in Toronto or the Montreal areas.
It's a very expensive place. It's also a very good place to be in the world. This is the best place to be. The weather's good. I'm from Africa. Trust me, this is the best place you can be.
I don't know why people don't go live in a small town, like a nice small town somewhere, if they want cheap real estate. It used to be you could go live in Chilliwack, but that's gone. Or Abbotsford.
And the report says that affordability was the key factor in people's decision to leave, but also 41% of people just wanted to leave the hustle and bustle of the city and be closer to nature, something that Vancouver offers just at a hefty cost. Craig Crow, CTV News, Vancouver.
Turning to tonight's weather, the north coast will get some rain and a low at 9 degrees. The Terrace-Kitimat area is projected to receive a chance of showers too, but a low at 7 degrees instead. And the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District should see some clearing conditions, while the low drops down to -2 degrees. On the north coast, the upcoming week will most likely get a lot of rain and clouds still, as the high shifts from 10 to 12 degrees. In the Terrace-Kitimat area, the week for them will similarly deal with many clouds and rain, plus the high will bounce between 10 and 16 degrees. And in the Bulkley Valley and Lakes District, their next week may get a little bit of sun, but will still get a fair amount of rain and clouds too, with the high moving from 13 to 16 degrees. Checking out the highways now, visit Drive BC for the latest and up-to-date conditions, and as always, drive safe out there. On Highway 16, there is utility work, bridge maintenance, road sweeping, construction work, roadside brushing, and paving operations. Highway 118 has some bridge maintenance. Highway 37 has some road maintenance work and frost heaves. 37A has bridge maintenance and road maintenance work. Some more road maintenance work on the Nishka Highway, and the Telegraph Creek Road has muddy sections and frost heaves. And this is what the roads were looking like this afternoon around the region from the view of the province's highway cams. Still to come, a major murder trial has taken a surprising turn. Welcome back. An unexpected turn happened at the trial for a Langley man accused of killing and dismembering his wife, Naomi Onatera. CTV's Michelle Brunoro was at the court, and a warning: some may find the details in this story are disturbing.
The lawyers for Obnas Regis asked for an adjournment in the case so they can speak to their client before deciding whether to call a defense case. They also intend to discuss whether Regis wishes to provide evidence. The request came on day 3 of Regis's manslaughter trial. He's accused of killing his wife, who was also a mother and had worked as a teacher librarian. Crown has now finished calling its witnesses. There were just 2. RCMP Sergeant Heather Burwell, a forensic identification expert, was back on the stand. She went through specific details of some of the forensic work done during the investigation. She testified how plumbing throughout the house was dismantled, including the sink, toilet, and shower. The floor in places was also lifted and tested as they searched for evidence. Earlier in the week, disturbing details were heard in court, including that Regis had his wife's bones, which were in small pieces, in a backpack, and he scattered them in the Fraser River in Fort Langley. According to the agreed-upon statement of facts, his very young daughter was with him at the time. The trial resumes Friday, when the judge will hear whether defense intends to call a case or whether closing submissions will begin next week. Michelle Bernoro, CTV News, New Westminster.
Pro-Palestinian protesters blocked a major intersection at UBC for hours as students and their families made their way to campus for graduation ceremonies. CTV's Ben Milger was there and has details on the arrest of one protester.
Several dozen people blocked the intersection of University Boulevard and Westbrook Mall for 4 hours Wednesday morning as dozens of officers from the RCMP and Vancouver Police looked on. Many of the protesters are students who have been camping out on campus in support of Gaza for a month.
UBC has not listened to our demands, and as violence in Rafah escalates, we are escalating our tactics until UBC meets our demands.
The demands include UBC divesting from funds that support weapons manufacturers which do business with Israel. UBC says its endowment is held in pooled funds and acknowledges 0.28% of that money is invested in the identified companies.
Weapons, torture technology, surveillance technology, but also companies that participate in maintaining the occupation of Palestine itself.
You could be under arrest for mischief. Clear the intersection.
As a line of police swept through the intersection, the protesters marched west on University Boulevard, chanting slogans.
You need to get off the road or you will be arrested for mischief. This is your last warning.
At one point, this woman refused to move, and RCMP placed her in handcuffs.
As we speak, bombs are falling. U.S.-funded bombs are falling on innocent children.
RCMP did not say what charges the woman might face. The remaining protesters continued their march across campus, where graduation ceremonies were underway. There was minimal interaction between protesters and grads, many of whom carried on with photo shoots, even as people waved flags and chanted while a line of RCMP officers looked on. The school says classes, events, and grad ceremonies will continue as scheduled, even as protesters threaten to further escalate their actions. Ben Milger, CTV News, Vancouver.
The verdict is in, and it's unanimous. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is officially a convicted felon after a New York jury returned 34 guilty verdicts in his historic hush money case. CTV's Joy Malbon has the latest from Washington.
After 11 hours and 43 minutes, the jury in Donald Trump's historic trial has reached a verdict. The jury found him guilty. He is now a convicted felon. The former president, Donald Trump, is a convicted felon. The former president was charged with 34 state felony counts of falsifying business records in an alleged scheme to hide hush money payments paid to Stormy Daniels and to hide that from the voters. This catch-and-kill scheme was aimed at suppressing damaging stories that could harm his 2016 campaign to win the White House. Trump has denied it all, says this is nothing more than political persecution. An acquittal would have been a massive win for the president. Now, here's the thing. He can still run for the White House as a convicted felon, and he expects to return to the campaign trail. The Trump team, the defense team, has said that they have already readied an appeal, and they will appeal this. Now, as far as sentencing is concerned, it's up to Judge Juan Merchan to decide whether or not he goes to jail or not. That is unlikely, simply because Donald Trump has no criminal record. Joy Malbon, CTV News, Washington.
A team from Simon Fraser University is set to bring its air quality workshops for seniors and renters on the road this summer, with events planned for communities in Metro Vancouver as well as Lillooet, Rock Creek, Oliver, and Osoyoos. A statement from the university says the Pacific Institute on Pathogens, Pandemics, and Society has so far led 25 workshops, helping to build more than 500 air filters to reduce participants' exposures to fine particulate from wildfire smoke. It says people are supplied with box fans, air filters, duct tape, and stickers to build simplified versions of the Corsi Rosenthal box, a DIY filter developed during the pandemic that boasts clean air delivery rates comparable to commercial units. These sessions are focused on helping low-income seniors and people with existing lung conditions such as asthma. And now we turn our attention to the stock markets. The Canadian dollar is up 12.10 cents. The price of gold is up $2.40. Oil is down $1.32. Natural gas is down 10 cents. Aluminum is up $38. In Toronto, the TSX is up 173.73 points. The Venture Index is up 5.94. In New York, the Dow Jones is down 330.06, and Nasdaq is down 183.50. Still ahead is the publicization of a major border human smuggling ring. Welcome back. U.S. authorities uncovered what they're calling an extremely dangerous human trafficking operation. It transported people by freight train from Vancouver to Washington State, a high-risk journey that could have turned deadly. CTV's Shannon Patterson on how this discovery was made.
The rail lines that run alongside the Peace Arch border crossing are used by both passenger and freight trains, but only the passenger ones are required to stop.
You see freight trains all day long coming from Canada into the US, and it just goes right through Blaine, doesn't stop, and finally gets inspected at this remote facility like 5 miles south of the border.
This is that inspection facility. Last August, U.S. authorities x-rayed a freight train here and uncovered an alleged human smuggling operation that transported dozens of people, mostly Mexican nationals, over the border from BC to Washington State.
The first incident where we had 29 people in a hopper car, they were in pellets, plastic pellets up to their neck.
In November, another freight train was x-rayed here and 13 more Mexican nationals were found hiding inside.
There's always a possibility of death or of serious injury.
Last week, 2 men living in the U.S. were charged with human trafficking in connection with the smuggling plot that originates in Vancouver.
We're obviously working with our Canadian law enforcement partners, and we'll continue to learn more about the Canadian side, I think, as we continue our investigation.
There's got to be a group of people who pick up these Mexican nationals or whoever's entering at Vancouver Airport, probably shuttle them to some rail yard in the middle of nowhere in the Lower Mainland where the trains are stopped, puts them in to these rail cars without anybody detecting them, and then picks them up on the American side. So there's got to be a Canadian operation that starts this.
While the vast majority of migrants who want to cross into the United States use the southern border, entering from Canada is not unheard of.
There's definitely a thought process of flying up into Vancouver and crossing the northern border is probably a bit easier.
To deter future human smuggling operations, American authorities are now looking at moving the Blaine Freight Train inspection facility.
So now I think you'll see steps taken where all of those trains, whether it's a passenger train or a freight train, will be inspected thoroughly at the port of entry before the train even enters the United States.
That would eliminate any opportunity for undetected stowaways to jump from a moving freight train as soon as it crosses the border. Shannon Patterson, CTV News.
An Abbotsford nurse got suspended for 4 months after he claimed payment for 47 full-time shifts that he didn't actually work. A summary of a consent agreement that was posted online by the BC College of Nurses and Midwives stated that the nurse committed time theft. It also said he was paid over $20,000 for the shifts he falsely claimed. The college last stated that the nurse voluntarily agreed to the terms limiting his practice, including remedial training on professionalism and ethics. That's all of our news for now. From everyone at CFTK-TV News, I'm Kale Maslin, and thanks for watching.